This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Oh my goodness. Good morning, good afternoon, whatever it is for you. I hope you're having a fantastic day. My name is Zach Schomler. This is Strong Opinion Sports, episode 587. Welcome in. It is Tuesday. We're going to talk today about Monday Night Football. There were 2 games last night on Monday night. We'll talk about Colorado football. And we're going to answer some Patreon questions at the end of the show today. I want to start, though, before anything else, with I want to file a complaint with whoever's listening out there. Probably nobody, but I just got to get it off my chest. I got to say, I'm really not enjoying having 2 Monday Night Football games happen. It's too much. I can't watch both of them at the same time. And because they're staggered and start about an hour apart, they're happening at the same time. And ESPN refuses to let me watch one, then watch another. I know I'm probably the only person on the planet with this problem because I'm one of the few people who it's my job to watch every football game and talk about it. I know a normal person going to work on a Tuesday morning, they're not going to just talk about the game from last night. They have to go to bed early and they pick one game probably and watch the best one, and they're fine. But there was a play on 3rd and 3 from the 5-yard line in the Rams-Bengals game where I'm like, I'm locked in, I'm watching, it's a big moment, I'm really engaged, it's a key play in the game, and ESPN goes split screen. For like a monumental play, 3rd and 3 for the Rams on the 5-yard line, I have to watch in one corner the game I've been watching and I'm really invested in, and in the other corner, they put on the Eagles and Tampa game, and like, I'm trying to understand. I realize for like a normal person, that's probably great. People like that. They want to know what's going on in the other game and whether they should switch back and forth. But I personally was like really invested in this moment. And then it got relegated to like the corner of the screen. I was like, guys, I wanna watch the Bengals Rams game right now. I am not here to watch Tampa Philly. I already watched it because I watched one, then the other. Man, little things like that irritate me, and we're getting so greedy. Do we need 2 Monday Night Football games now? I like having one. And I understand for the common person, I realize I might be speaking to a very small amount of people, because a lot of people, I would imagine, like that if there's a bad game, they can switch to the other one. But I miss the days where we just had a great primetime matchup. Neither game, by the way. The best game of the weekend was not a Monday Night Football game. Why can't we have that? Why can't we have the primetime game shared with a national audience? Why can't that be the best game of the week? Why is it instead we have like 2 kind of average games? You know, I'm very aware I'm probably the only person with this frustration, but if you're a Bengals fan, I would be very sure you were pissed. 3rd and 3 from the 5-yard line. They put the game up in the corner, then put the Eagles game on screen for some reason. I'm like, guys, I don't want to watch the Eagles game right now. I don't know. I wonder, write in, let me know, how do you feel about having 2 Monday Night Football games happening at the same time? That's even worse, by the way. I'd be fine if the game started earlier and then the next one was afterward, then you could watch both. But I realize it's a Monday night, and if you can't fit 2 games on Monday night back-to-back, then why are we having 2 games on Monday night? Why are they happening at the same time staggered? It makes no sense to me. Please write in, let me know, how do you feel about having 2 games on Monday night? Am I alone? I'm probably alone. I'm probably the only one who finds it very annoying, but let me know what you think. All right, before we get into the show, before we get into Monday night directly, we got to pay the bills, so let's do that. Let's pay the bills. Prize Picks is the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Prize Picks allows you to make an entry based on player projections, and in 60 seconds, you could enter something like Travis Kelce more than 5 catches, Tyreek Hill more than 100 yards receiving, and Justin Fields less than 200 yards passing. And if your picks are right, you can win money. Making picks makes games more engaging, and you could turn something like $5 into $50. Prize Picks offers quick and easy deposits. You can even use Apple Pay. And they have weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts. For example, there's a weekly event called Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value. So put your skills to the test in daily fantasy. Go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/CLNS, code CLNS, for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, daily fantasy made easy. All right, we are back. Hope you're doing well. Still a bit congested today. Did the neti pot 4 times, got a lot of mucus out. Not feeling 100%, and my friends tested positive for the Rona, so that's probably what I got. It's going back around, I guess. I have no idea. I'm just glad I'm fine. All right, I'm still very congested, and I feel like this crap in my chest still, but otherwise, I'm totally good. Let's talk about Monday Night Football. On Monday Night Football, the Philadelphia Eagles beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 25-11. So Philly won by 2 touchdowns. It was actually worse than that, though. Tampa got a touchdown and a 2-point conversion on their final possession of the game. That made it 25-3. It was 25-3 before that made it 25-11. Also, worth noting, by the way, the Eagles had this really great long drive, 9-minute drive at the end of the game to run out the clock. And I thought that was really impressive, the way they just steadily, methodically ran up the clock, never gave the ball back to Tampa. That was pretty cool. Now, the big story from this game, though, as Tampa loses to Philly 25-11. The Eagles won on Monday night. The big story here to me is that the Buccaneers defense looked pretty good, all things considered. Philly was in the red zone 5 times in this football game and were held to only 1 touchdown. They got stopped on a 4th and 2 early in the red zone, held to field goals. Tampa picked off Jalen Hurts, the Philly quarterback, 2 times. I thought the Buccaneers defense played pretty well. The difference in this game, though, was Tampa's execution on offense, or rather their lack of execution. The little details really matter. And the Eagles' defense is outstanding. They've got a great pass rush. They're really good in the run game. Jalen Carter, their rookie defensive tackle, is already a budding star in the NFL. And against a really good defense, you can't make little mistakes. You have to catch every pass. You can't have drop passes. You can't have a penalty here and there. Baker Mayfield was late on a throw before halftime. Coming left, back right. He was late, got picked off. Rachaad White fumbled deep in their own territory. These little mistakes add up, and it cost Tampa dearly in this football game. We learned a lot about Tampa, I thought, on Monday Night Football against a really good Eagles team. We learned that Tampa, they could win the NFC South. We know that right now the Saints quarterback Derek Carr is out with an AC joint injury. We'll talk about that later in the show. Tampa's got a good defense, but they're a defensive-led team. And in this football game on Monday night, when they needed Baker and their offense to give them run support and score points, the Buccaneers' offense wasn't good enough. And, there's still time. We're only 3 games into the year. Maybe by the end of the year, they make progress and aren't making little mistakes in key moments. But right now, we've learned that, the limiting factor of this football team is Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers' offense. The defense looks pretty good. They're making a lot of plays. I thought they were given a couple hard situations, actually, with some turnovers that Tampa had on offense, where they were given a shot where they're backed up way in their own territory, having to stop the Eagles' defense. And I thought, for the most part, Tampa wasn't great on defense, but they did really well in a tough situation, and they didn't get enough support from their offense. Now, I did say there were things that Tampa did wrong on defense, right? Philly ran the ball for over 200 yards in this football game. DeAndre Swift, their running back, had 16 carries for 130 yards. Philly dominated on both sides of the ball, offense and defense. A.J. Brown had 9 catches for 131 yards. And to me, the gaping holes in the running game, the Eagles' offensive line absolutely dominated up front. Now, Jalen Hurts had 2 interceptions. I don't love that. He did have 2 touchdowns as well. One on a quarterback sneak, and then Jalen Hurts had a really sweet touchdown pass where he was hanging out in the pocket. The play was long, took a long time to develop. By the end, it was almost like really this speaks to how good the Eagles' offensive line was, where he didn't extend the play outside the pocket. He just was in the pocket for a long, long time. And he found his receiver, Zacchaeus, running across the middle, and basically threw him open. It was kind of a cool play where the route was a deep dig across the middle of the field, and Jalen Hurts threw it high angle up over the defender guarding him, kind of led him back farther downfield into a tight little window for a touchdown. It was kind of a great play where he made that happen. Jalen Hurts, with a great throw, good ball placement, made that into a touchdown to a receiver that really wasn't open based on the route they were running. And he threw a receiver open into an area where the route wasn't leading him. I really like that. But all around, Philly was dominant. They look fantastic. And they're 3-0. So even though Jalen Hurts doesn't have the best numbers in the world so far this year, doing good enough to win. The quarterback sneak remains unbeatable, basically, for Philly in short yardage, 4th and 1, 3rd and 1, 4th and inches, 4th and goal. They put Jalen Hurts under center. They run that quarterback sneak, and nobody can stop it, man. I don't really even know what you can do. And it's not just because they're pushing Jalen Hurts from behind. It's that their offensive line gets so much push. Jalen Hurts puts himself in the right position. I'm kind of convinced, even if they ban the ability to push a ball carrier from behind after this year, even if they get rid of that, Jalen Hurts and Philly's still going to get a lot of first downs on quarterback sneaks simply because Jalen Hurts just gets himself right down in there underneath. Great position. They get a lot of push on the interior of that offensive line, and it's a basically unstoppable play for Philly. So you can, like I said, I thought Tampa's defense did really well. They were in the red zone 5 times, only gave up 1 touchdown to Philly. You can also argue, though, Philly had the ball again at the end of the game for like 9 minutes. They ran out the entire rest of the clock. I'm not one that's eager to talk bad about the Buccaneers defense. I thought with what they were given, they did a pretty good job. And the reality is that Baker Mayfield and Tampa's offense got to step up and make more plays. There were a couple throws to Mike Evans where I thought Mike Evans could have caught him, but they also could have been better balls. And I think both players, the quarterback and the receiver, could both be a little better there and make that play happen. There were little things that were costing Tampa's offense that if they want to be a serious threat in the NFC, you have to win a game like this. You have to be able to compete, keep it close, and score enough points. And right now, where Baker Mayfield on the Buccaneers offense is not executing at a high enough level to win a big game against a Super Bowl contender type football team like the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, right now in the NFC, from what I've seen, the 49ers and the Eagles are the 2 best teams in the NFC. One of them is probably going to be in the Super Bowl. I'm curious if Dallas can throw themselves in the mix as well. Losing Trevon Diggs, the star corner in Dallas, I think is a much bigger deal than we're giving credit to. Their defense was a dominating force that I think really lost a key player that's going to hurt them and hurt every aspect of the Cowboys defense is going to be a step down now because of losing a star corner. That's a problem. So again, in the NFC, Philly and San Francisco are the 2 best teams. We will see if Dallas can also throw themselves into that mix. All right, let's talk about the other game on Monday Night Football. I got to reshuffle my notes here. We got a little bit going on. Monday Night Football Game 2 was a game between Cincinnati and the Rams. The Cincinnati Bengals beat the Rams on Monday Night Football, the second game of the night, 19-16. There's a couple things worth noting we should talk about. Number one, Bengals receiver Jamar Chase really hit his stride in this football game. He had 12 catches for 141 yards. That's more yards and catches in week 1 and 2 combined in week 3 that he had. So he's finally kind of starting to get going. I like to see that. The Bengals started putting Jamar Chase in the slot, meaning instead of way out wide, more in a slot position farther inside. That's giving Jamar Chase better matchups where he's being guarded by linebackers and safeties and that third corner. I think that's an interesting wrinkle that Cincinnati's doing it's working. It's not a new thing. They've done it all year, but it's really starting to pay off with Jamar Chase getting really good matchups against players that physically are going to have a hard time guarding him. Joe Burrow's not at 100%. The Bengals quarterback's got a calf injury. At first I was kind of skeptical. How bad is this calf injury really going to affect Joe Burrow? But then I went back to my playing days and I really thought about it. When you did training camp, I remember we would do conditioning where, gosh, I was so pissed in college. The quarterback who ended up being the starting quarterback told everyone he had an injury. He didn't. It was BS. But he told everyone, "Oh, I'm hurt. I can't do conditioning." And so he didn't have to do all the crazy sprints in training camp. And in training camp, your legs are everything. And once you lose your legs, it's a big problem. such a big part of throwing the football is your legs. I was pissed. I was number one for all the quarterbacks in conditioning. He didn't even have to run. My legs were spent like week 1 of training camp. His legs were great all through the season. And my point is that using your legs is a big part of throwing the football. I don't know how much the calf injury is affecting Joe Burrow, but I know that when your legs aren't at 100%, it makes throwing a football way more difficult. Everyone thinks it's all with your arms, but the reality is a good throwing motion starts with your feet and starts with your legs. Your legs and your core generate a lot of torque and power to throw the ball downfield. The Bengals still got their first win of the year. That's awesome. I think it's actually kind of funny. It's laughable to me that there were fans of Cincinnati, some of which who were calling for Zach Taylor, the Bengals head coach, to be fired. Like, I think people really overreacted to the 0-2 start for Cincinnati. How about some gratitude, actually, if you're a Cincinnati Bengals fan? Like, Zach Taylor is the coach. Him and Joe Burrow just got you to back-to-back AFC title games. In fact, you went to a Super Bowl 2 years ago. I'm in no hurry to run Zach Taylor out of town. Yeah, they lost 2 games to start the year. It sucked. They weren't doing great. That's part of the game sometimes. And remember, Joe Burrow isn't fully healthy. That's a problem and definitely going to hold them back. The Bengals' next 3 games, they play at Tennessee, then they play at Arizona, then they play Seattle in Cincinnati. All 3 are easily winnable games. Then you could be, 4-2 to start the year in a much different position. And suddenly all the talk about should we fire Zach Taylor better disappear really quick. They got a bye week 7. Cincinnati plays on the road at the 49ers week 8. That's a really tough game. They follow that up with a game at home against Buffalo. Week 8 and 9, 49ers, then Buffalo back-to-back. That's not easy. The Bengals do not have an easy schedule this year. And I always thought Cincinnati was kind of destined for a small step backward this year. They've been to back-to-back AFC titles. They've been losing a couple key players here and there on defense basically every year. And it's just hard to keep up the level of success that they've had in Cincinnati. But I don't know. This could be kind of a lost year, a year that when we look back on the career of Joe Burrow, we go, oh yeah, remember that year, 2023? They were solid. They weren't the same, and they kind of had to use the year to regroup and reload for the next year. I think that could be very possible for Cincinnati, but they won their first game of the year, and I'm not really interested in this whole conversation of giving up on Zach Taylor. It's like, what are you doing? Get out of here. Now, it is worth noting, Bengals wide receiver T. Higgins is in the last year of his contract, and as you talk about the Bengals and they paid Joe Burrow a ton of money, next they got to pay Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, their 2-star receivers. T. Higgins is in a contract year, meaning that after this year he does not have a long-term contract, and so far this year, T. Higgins has been targeted 28 times. He only has 10 catches for 110 yards. He does have 2 touchdowns, but it's very possible T. Higgins having a down year could actually work to benefit Cincinnati, where they could save a little bit of money on their T. Higgins contract, get him locked down long-term for a little less money if his numbers are down this year, which so far T. Higgins' numbers are down. He had 2 catches on 8 targets last night on Monday night. Week 1, he had no catches on 8 targets. I mean, he is not having the best year of his career, and that might actually be a quietly good thing for Cincinnati, allowing them to extend him long-term for maybe a little bit less money and leaving more money available for Jamar Chase and for the rest of the guys they want to use to build around Joe Burrow and this Bengals offense. Now we got to talk about the Rams. Overall, I thought that in the first 3 weeks of the year, the LA Rams impressed me. They're 1-2, but they've been really competitive. They beat Seattle 30-13 week 1. Week 2, they lost by 7 to the 49ers. And now here in week 3, they lost to Cincinnati by a field goal. A Bengals team that I think is pretty good, actually. And I think for the Rams, I was just totally wrong. They look like a 6 or 7 win team who is going to be building for their future and in a good position maybe next year or the year after to make another run. I mean, they really are. They got young guys everywhere, making big plays, doing good stuff. And I talked about wondering whether or not the Rams might have a shot at Caleb Williams during the preseason. Let's get rid of that right now. First of all, they don't need Caleb Williams. Matthew Stafford's playing at a really high level. And second of all, the Rams are going to be nowhere near in a position to draft a quarterback like Caleb Williams. They are going to not have a top first-round pick. And, One thing I want to talk about in this game specifically between Cincinnati and the LA Rams, it's very weird to me. The Rams kind of abandoned the run. Week 1, they ran the ball 40 times. In week 2, they ran the ball 22 times. Against Cincinnati, Kyren Williams, the number 1 running back for the Rams, had 10 carries for 38 yards. They ran a total of 13 times. One of them was not a designed run, but a run by Matthew Stafford. Especially in the red zone, it was very weird to me. The Rams made no effort to run the football. And I left myself, I was left wondering, I trust Sean McVay. He knows more about football than I do, but it was interesting, and I did take note of the fact that the Rams did not really try to run the football at all on Monday night. Now, the offensive line was a struggle, and maybe that's part of why. Their left tackle, Alaric Jackson, left the game injured. I'm sure that didn't help them. It really didn't help them in the passing game. Matthew Stafford got sacked 6 times in this football game. They had to put up number 57, Zach Thomas. Zach Thomas, and we love the name Zach, but Zach Thomas, not a great left tackle. In fact, as far as I can tell, he's actually their backup right tackle, he's kind of their utility guy, I guess, who can bounce between sides. But I thought Zach Thomas was a right tackle. He came in as the backup left tackle in this football game. Zach Thomas, while we love the name Zach, we have to acknowledge Zach Thomas had no chance at blocking really good defensive end from Cincinnati, Trey Hendrickson, who kind of ruined that Rams offense in the second half of this football game on Monday night. The Rams had the ball 5 times in the second half. They had a field goal on their first drive of the second half. On the last drive of their second half, they put together a really nice drive. But those middle 3 drives, they had 3 and-outs that were combined. There were 3 sacks on those 3 drives, and the offensive line was a problem. Trey Hendrickson was causing a lot of problems with Zach Thomas, their backup left tackle. And, Matthew Stafford really didn't have a shot a couple times where he's on his back and totally getting obliterated. Now, Matthew Stafford, the Rams quarterback, I believe is doing some really awesome stuff this year. He deserves respect. He deserves credit. He had a great throw against the Bengals where, first of all, physically he makes it look so easy. His arm is massive, but he had a throw to Tutu Atwell, which was in extreme anticipation, leading him across the field away from a defender into a tight window. Is a beautiful throw. Now, Stafford did have 2 interceptions in this football game. His second one was tipped. That's not his fault. The first interception Matthew Stafford threw, though, was a really, really bad decision where he was rolling left. He decided to throw the ball kind of underhand, underarm, back across the middle of the field late, and it got picked off. It was a bad decision. And I got to say this. I really, really love Dan Orlovsky, the ESPN broadcaster. He does a great job. He's a great broadcaster, does good work. He knows the game. But it is worth saying, Dan Orlovsky should never, ever broadcast a Matthew Stafford game ever again. I like Dan Orlovsky, but he played quarterback in Detroit. He was there in 2008, right before they drafted Matthew Stafford. In 2015, he was Matthew Stafford's backup in Detroit. They're good friends, and Dan Orlovsky, I don't know if he didn't want to talk bad about his friend. I don't know if he doesn't want to talk bad about him because it might make him look jealous or something. I have no idea, but it drives me nuts that Dan Orlovsky refuses to be critical of Matthew Stafford. That's your job as an analyst during a game. When the quarterback makes a mistake, you got to point it out. That's part of being an analyst. And after the terrible interception Matthew Stafford threw in the first half, crickets. Nothing. I was waiting, hey, what are they going to say about this? That's a terrible decision. They showed the replay 5 times, and Dan Orlovsky says nothing. In fact, all he said was, we don't even know if that's an interception. It might be a drop pass. And then there was another play later. It was earlier. I don't remember. There was a play that I really, really remember. Pre-snap, it's they are showing blitz. It looks like they're blitzing. And as a quarterback, even if they are, the Bengals are really dynamic. They do a lot of stuff pre-snap where they'll show you a blitz and they back off, or they'll back off, then run a late blitz onto the field. But the Bengals regularly do a lot of stuff pre-snap to mess with the quarterback. This was not one of those scenarios. Pre-snap, the Bengals show all-out pressure. They're overloaded to the right side. They have no answer protection-wise. And if you're a quarterback, you have to take that threat seriously. You can't have the Bengals defense in that scenario blitz you on, it was 2nd and 10, and not see it coming at all. They're showing blitz. You got to call an audible or call a hot route or do something in preparation for, hey, if they blitz, we can't protect that. Not only did Matthew Stafford not make any kind of pre-snap change, he didn't even see the blitz coming. And I'm like, I'm watching at home going, they're blitzing off the right side of the line. By the way, that's your front side. As a quarterback, as you drop back as a right-handed quarterback, your backside is hard to see because that's your left side. Your front side, your peripheral vision can see the entire way. Not only did he not see the blitz pre-snap, his peripheral vision didn't allow him to even feel the blitz coming from the right side. He got sacked on 2nd and 10. It kind of ruined their drive. And that's a play where, as a broadcaster, you have to say, look, that's on Matthew Stafford. That's sack. He's got to pick it up pre-snap. He's got to do something about it. And you can't have a guy come free off your front side and not even see it at all. Dan Orlovsky was silent in those two moments. And I was like, what? I like Dan Orlovsky, but when it comes to Matthew Stafford, he is simply unable to be objective. So I don't know, man. Matthew Stafford, all due respect, he's fantastic. He's having a great year. The Rams look way better than I thought, but not everything Matthew Stafford does is good. And he had a bad interception. He took a bad sack. I thought in the second half he got sacked because he had no chance. I mean, their left tackle was a backup, Zach Thomas, and he simply could not guard or block Trey Hendrickson at all. But, it's one thing to look for. If you ever get to watch a Rams game with Dan Orlovsky broadcasting, just notice, it's very interesting how much Dan Orlovsky goes out of his way almost to never mention anything Matthew Stafford does bad, and in fact talks about him like he's the second coming of Jesus. Matthew Stafford's a really good quarterback, man. He deserves credit. He deserves praise, but he does make mistakes, unlike Dan Orlovsky would allow you to believe. And those little things, you have to point that out. When a quarterback gives up a sack, when he throws a bad interception, you got to talk about that. That's part of your job as a broadcaster. I really believe that. You talk about the good, you talk about the bad, and watching, it drove me a little bit nuts that he didn't talk about the bad at all during this football game. All right, let's talk about quarterback Derek Carr. Derek Carr, the Saints' new quarterback, got hurt during week 3 against the Packers, got slammed to the turf, right shoulder right into the ground, then a defender landed on him. He got hurt, he left the game. We've now discovered that that's a sprained AC joint on that right throwing shoulder for Derek Carr. He will be week to week. I would imagine that Derek Carr is not going to play here in week 4 against Tampa. So Tampa goes on the road. They play at New Orleans, and the starting quarterback for the New Orleans Saints in that football game. A big game, by the way, kind of the battle for the lead in the NFC South. Both teams are 2-1, Tampa, New Orleans. The quarterback for New Orleans is going to be, a little drum roll, Jameis Winston, the former first-round pick of Tampa. The guy who didn't work out in Tampa Bay is going to play against his former team. It's not the first time he started against Tampa, but still it's interesting and fun. And Jameis Winston, I don't know if you guys have seen the videos I've seen of Jameis Winston, where it's just him not trying to be funny, not trying to do anything silly, but like Jameis Winston does the goofiest stuff, man. The way he runs onto the field, like waddling like a little weird duck, or like some of the stuff he says is just like outlandish. You're like, what the heck? Now, I also want to really kind of give praise to Jameis Winston. There's a video of Jameis Winston, who's a multimillionaire now, revisiting his childhood home where he grew up in, I believe, Alabama. But I've seen the video, like the property, all of it. It's like, wow, this is destitute level stuff. And I think Jameis Winston is a really cool story of a guy who started with nothing and became a millionaire and a high-level NFL player. And still, though, I think it's also worth noting, like, if you want good entertainment, just Google Jameis Winston being goofy. Like, you'll find some really funny videos of him, like, not trying to be. He's unintentionally funny, but he does so many little things that you're like, what? It's a joke sometimes. You're like, man, Jameis Winston, and I guess what I'm saying here is that week 4, Tampa plays at New Orleans. It's a massive game, the two best teams in the NFC South. And if you want something fun to watch for or look for, just look for the little moments of Jameis Winston being like a goober, basically, doing weird, random stuff on the sidelines, saying funny stuff. Like the moment, for example, where one time he like hit A to W, and you're like, what are you doing, man? Like, that's so silly. Like your hands are not pretzels. I feel like someone's going to quote that out. Your hands are not pretzels. Please never make fun of me for that. I'm so sorry. But Jameis Winston like cracks me up And on top of watching a great football game, I hope, week 4 between Tampa and New Orleans, I'm just excited for the little meme-worthy moments for Jameis Winston where he does something funny or goofy. And I'm not trying to make fun of him. I just appreciate him. He's like a national treasure. And I legitimately would love to watch a TV show with Jameis Winston just being himself. He like really is that funny to me. Put him in like a Hawaiian shirt, send him to, I don't know, literally anywhere in the world and have him just share his observations. Like Marshawn Lynch and Jameis Winston are both hilarious humans that both need TV shows. I think Marshawn actually has one, but I would watch so much TV if you just put Jameis Winston on screen and put him in like uncomfortable or funny scenarios. I want to see Jameis Winston go to Japan. Like, what would that be like? Jameis Winston, his loud, big self getting like looked at and trying to interact with Japanese people. Like, that sounds hilarious to me. And if anyone needs ideas for TV shows, hit me up. I got so many ideas for TV shows where Jameis Winston is like the host or star, and you just put him in like a funny scenario. I would watch that in a heartbeat, and I think it would be in the internet era today where you clip everything out and there's YouTube shorts and TikToks and stuff. Like Jameis Winston on camera needs to happen because he would create so many clickable, memeable, funny, hilarious moments. And I'm telling you, Jameis Winston and like an Anthony Bourdain camera crew. Send him to like Vietnam. Send him to Japan and just film the chaos that ensues. It would be amazing, amazing television. I don't know how we got here. I don't know how that tangent happened, but gosh, I love Jameis. News broke today. The New York Jets are signing a veteran quarterback, Trevor Siemian, to their practice squad. A lot of Jets fans are really excited. Ooh, Trevor Siemian's going to save our year. He's our new quarterback. I hate to break it to you. He's not. He's not the savior of the New York Jets. Trevor Siemian, I don't know. I think Jets fans are so frustrated, understandably so. Aaron Rodgers got hurt 4 plays into the game. They're heartbroken. You have to watch Zach Wilson every week, which, you know what's really sad? I think Zach Wilson, if he'd really been given a year or two to sit behind Aaron Rodgers, there might have been a chance he could save his career. But he is not ready. He didn't have enough time learning behind Aaron. He looks awful. And I think what Jets fans need to accept is that the year is lost. Like, there is no Trevor Siemian. There is no trading for, gosh, I don't know. I mean, Jacoby Brissett's not, the Washington Commanders aren't getting rid of Jacoby Brissett. Like, you're not going to get a good backup quarterback in a trade. The Jets' year is over. Trevor Siemian's about as good as it's going to get. And that's not very good. And, I've been seeing people on Reddit and YouTube comments and stuff saying, like, oh, like, you know, Trevor Siemian, if he can do what he did in 2001, maybe we can put together a playoff year. It's like, guys, give it up. Like, it's the Jets season is over. The minute Aaron Rodgers' Achilles snapped, the year was over. That's it. And Joe Namath said, I quote, "I've seen enough of Zach Wilson." Oh, man, it's so sad because Zach Wilson has a good arm. He can run around a little bit. Like, he can make some plays, but he's just not ready as a decision maker, as a leader at any level to be an NFL starting quarterback. And, actually, Joe Namath said it. He said, send Zach Wilson to, like, Kansas City to sit behind Patrick Mahomes for 2 years. That's what he needs. What Zach Wilson really needed was 2 years sitting behind Aaron Rodgers. And I think if that had happened, maybe Zach Wilson's career might have been salvageable. But at this point, he's playing before he's ready. It doesn't look good. And kind of a weird reality here. If I'm a Jets fan, I don't know that I want to bench Zach Wilson. He's doing horrible. And that's kind of good. Like, the worse Zach Wilson does, the better the Jets will do in the draft next year. And maybe you could draft a player in the first round that would allow the Jets to help Aaron Rodgers win next year. Or what about this? Imagine if the Jets were so bad, they could draft Drake May or Caleb Williams. If they get a top 5 pick next year, I mean, the Jets are set. They have Aaron Rodgers potentially coming back. They could bring in a rookie quarterback to come in and sit for a year behind Aaron Rodgers. I mean, that's an amazing, amazing opportunity. But I've given up on Zach Wilson. Similar to Joe Namath, it's sad because I think it is a missed opportunity. If Zach Wilson had been able to sit for 2 years behind Aaron, he might have been able to learn enough lessons to salvage his career, but He got forced back into duty before he was ready. Didn't have enough time sitting, learning behind Aaron. And it's just, to me, I think that, Zach Wilson's going to be really rich. He's going to be able to walk away and do whatever he wants, but he did not work as an NFL quarterback. And I would love for Zach Wilson to prove me wrong. I like him. I even compared him to Gone Freaks, the main character of Hunter x Hunter earlier in the season. Like he's a likable guy. I want to see him do well. I'd love to be wrong, but I personally have given up any hope of Zach Wilson working out and being a great quarterback for the Jets, and I've given up on the Jets having a good year. It's just not going to happen. The minute Aaron Rodgers got hurt, their year was lost. All right. How about another big loss? So Denver, the Broncos lost 70-20 on Sunday to the Miami Dolphins. They got obliterated. Another team in Colorado also got obliterated this past weekend. On Saturday, Oregon beat Colorado 42-6. And it was a completely dominating performance by Oregon. Oregon looked outstanding. Credit to them. They sacked Shedeur Sanders 7 times, the Colorado quarterback. And, when Colorado beat TCU week 1, myself included, all of us, we all looked around and went, Colorado's better than we thought. So what's the rest of their year going to look like? And there were 3 big games everyone kind of circled and went, okay, Oregon, USC, Utah. Can they win these 3 games? Can they be competitive? And, one of those games has now happened, the Oregon game, and no, it was not competitive. It wasn't exciting. It wasn't fun to watch. It was a train wreck. I mean, it was like when, was it East Palestine? A train got derailed and put up toxic stuff in the air and all this horrible stuff happened. It was like that. It was like really bad. I was like, oh, there's no saving this. This is just really a bad game. And it's not a shock that Oregon obliterated Colorado. I mean, we saw 2 weeks ago, Colorado barely survived. They had like a sketchy win over Colorado State in double overtime. And if you need double overtime to beat Colorado State, it's hard to imagine you can beat USC, Oregon, Utah. And Colorado now, they've been knocked down a peg. They're unranked. And I want to play a clip. This is what Oregon coach Dan Lanning said to his team before the game in the locker room to kind of fire up his guys.
Rooted in substance, not flash. Rooted in substance. Today, we talk with our pads. The Cinderella story is over, man. Right? They're fighting for clicks, we're fighting for wins. There's a difference. This game ain't gonna be played in Hollywood, it's gonna be played on the grass. Let's go.
I'm not gonna lie, I don't love that being made public. Like what a coach says to his team privately in the locker room pregame to motivate their team, I don't think that needs to be broadcast nationally. It's kind of unfortunate that got out of the locker room, but I want to share some of what Colorado head coach Deion Sanders said postgame and how he responded to getting his butt kicked and how he even responded directly to what Dan Lanning just said about playing for clicks. Take a listen.
It's a good old-fashioned butt kicking. It's no excuses, no nothing. Their coaches did a heck of a job preparing their team. Obviously, we didn't. We lost offensively, defensively, as well as special teams. Well-coached team. Bo Nix played his butt off. Defensively, they presented some things that I guess we just couldn't get around. We couldn't advance the ball rushing or throwing the ball as well. Seemed like they had our number. But hats off to their coaching staff, to their head coach. Great job, and they're truly prepared.
I really, really like that answer. I mean, there's no excuses there. He said we got our butts kicked. He gave credit to Oregon, talked about their coaching staff, talked about how good they did. I think all around, that's a really great statement from Deion Sanders. And the next quote I want to share is really interesting. Deion talks about Colorado getting humbled.
People around the country would say this is what they needed to humble themselves. We wasn't arrogant or whatever. We're confident people. If our confidence offends your insecurity, that's a problem with you. It's not us. We expect to do well. We expect to play well. We expect to win every game we step out there. We expect to practice to perfection and go out there and execute the things that we practice. We just didn't do it today. But it's not something that was needed. It's just like saying you get in a car wreck or something. Oh, he needed that to slow him down. You don't need that. That's just stupid. It's just something that happened, and they got the best of us today. That's just it.
I have no doubt that some people really enjoyed watching Colorado get obliterated on Saturday. I mean, that little yappy dog got just pounded into the ground. I think there was a great line from Deion, though. Deion just said, If our confidence offends your insecurity, that's a problem with you. We expect to win. We expect to do well every time we get on the field. That's awesome. Now, the next thing Deion said was this. Take a listen.
We ain't got time to have no pity party. There's nobody walk around the locker room with napkins and tissues. Get your butt up. Let's get on that plane. Let's go. I don't say stuff just to say it for a click, contrary to what some may say. But, I keep receipts. But I'm serious. I analyze and I understand what we're up against and what we have and what we need. One thing that I could say honestly and candidly, you better get me right now. This is the worst we're going to be. You better get me right now.
You better get me right now. This is the worst we're going to be. I love that. And you better beat us now because we're only getting it better is basically what he's saying. That's awesome. And Deion, it's unfortunate that the Pac-12 is falling apart because Colorado against Oregon every year will be a fun rivalry game to develop. I would love to see Dan Lanning and Deion Sanders kind of go back and forth and play each other every year and watch how Colorado grows and can they eventually compete with Oregon. And it's really kind of disappointing that we're not going to get to develop and build a rivalry here. But Deion next year in the Pac-12 is going to start this process all over again. He's going to offend people. The people in the Big 12 are going to be bothered by him. And I think it's awesome, man. Deion Sanders is great for football all around. I mean, we saw a game. I feel like, and maybe this is something that's been happening for a long time that I just wasn't paying close enough attention to, but it does feel like this year, college coaches more and more are throwing little jabs at each other and making it fun, and there's more drama than ever. And I think Deion kind of is part of that. I mean, we saw Ryan Day, the coach of Ohio State, take a shot talking about Lou Holtz, the former Notre Dame coach. What did he say about us? Really, and I really like that Deion has added this, I think, to college football, where more than ever we're seeing personality from college coaches, and it's a recruiting ploy. It's part of getting your message out there. I think it makes college football more fun. Now, the next thing I want to share, the next clip of Deion Sanders is really, really important, though, because people need to hear this. Deion Sanders, I think, is really misunderstood. He talks a lot about himself, and he'll tell you, we're great, we believe, we're confident. Deion will tell you how great he is, and he's usually right. But there's one thing Deion Sanders does not do. It's very, very important. People talk trash to him. Deion Sanders does not sling it back. Deion Sanders does not talk trash to other people or other coaches. That is not his way. I don't think he likes his team doing that. And I really think that's a part of Deion Sanders that gets really misunderstood. They see a loud guy with sunglasses and a hood and other stuff, and they judge him without listening to him and getting to know him. And as I've listened to Deion Sanders a ton, he's really classy, he's fun, he's good to listen to, but he really doesn't ever stoop down to the level of attacking other people. So take a listen to this quote here.
God bless him, though, man. He's a great coach. He did a great job. God bless him. He can take their shots. They won. I don't shoot. I don't do that. They won. We got some work to do, and you better get us right now, because I like what I see. I love I know I have on shades, but I can see the future, and it looks really good. So I'm excited about it. I really am.
I absolutely love what Deion just said. I don't shoot. I don't do that. Take your shots, right? Deion is not going to stoop down to your level and talk crap or talk bad about someone else. And it's really funny thinking about, Dan Lanning is this young coach at Oregon. I love the idea of Dan Lanning, a coach, talking trash to Deion Sanders, the guy who played in the MLB, the NFL Hall of Famer with a gold jacket. To me, Deion Sanders feels untouchable. And, I mean, you can't just be his buddy if you're competing against him. But if I'm Dan Lanning, I would rather shake his hand and be on good terms. That's an awesome dude. And maybe I'm a bit of a fan, I guess. I don't know. But it is interesting for me to imagine a guy like Dan Lanning taking shots at the player Deion Sanders. Think about Dan Lanning played football at some point. The audacity, right, of a former player Dan Lanning talking trash to former player Deion Sanders. But Deion's not just a former player. He's also a coach, and I find it really interesting. Now, this is very important, too. I talked about how Deion doesn't talk trash about other people. I want to share what Dan Lanning, the Oregon head coach, said post-game, because I think it's important to share both sides of the story and both sides of the narrative. And allow people to see, I think, Dan Lanning's true colors. So take a listen to this.
We were prepared for a battle. It didn't end up being a battle, but I've also been on the other end of this before too, and I think that team's heading in the right direction. I think Coach is doing a phenomenal job. Obviously, he's brought great enthusiasm and response from his players, and I know that they'll bounce back from this game moving forward. On the same note, I get a little passionate at times, right? I get a little excited about what I want to accomplish for our team, and I just want to say, I need to humble myself a little bit. This is one game, right? And I'm not satisfied. So I just told our players, we're about to go play great quarterbacks. We're about to go play great teams moving forward, and it's about how good we can become, right? It's not really about who we play.
Are you surprised? I said, show his true colors. You probably thought Dan Lanning was about to say something negative. I think Dan Lanning, actually pretty classy. I think he's an awesome coach. Really like him. This is why I didn't like that pregame speech getting recorded and aired nationally. They had a camera in the locker room. I think that your pregame speech to your team, whatever you have to say to fire up your guys, I don't think that needs to be shared publicly. Like, that feels kind of sacred. And I don't think that the camera in the locker room catching Dan Lanning saying, they play for clicks, substance, all this other stuff, I don't think that accurately represents Dan Lanning and how he feels. And I think you say whatever you say to get your team fired up, and in that moment you want to hype the guys up. But I thought Dan Lanning, when push really came to shove, he was classy, respectful, said good things about Colorado, and that's, I think, really what he is. And it's a shame, I think, that pregame speech got clipped out and put on TV and Twitter and ESPN and Instagram and everywhere. And I just don't think it's an accurate representation of Dan Lanning, who I think ultimately is a really respectful guy. And really, really, I like him, man. And I just think that it's a shame that that quote got aired publicly. And again, I just think that what you say in your locker room, that feels sacred. That feels like a thing you don't push out there. And Oregon did push it out, but I don't know. I felt like they did Dan Lanning a bit of a disservice there, where I don't think he's a guy who would go out of his way to throw shade at Deion Sanders. He talked a little bit of trash to his team, but that feels like a sacred thing you say to your players. I don't think that's something that should be out there publicly. And I don't know. I really like Dan Lanning. He's awesome. I think he's going to be really dynamic and interesting in the Big Ten next year. And it's just unfortunate that, I don't know, it adds character, it adds some color to who he is and his personality. But I just don't think that pregame speech was an accurate representation of who he is and how he carries himself as a coach. Now, I want to read a question from Patreon. Joshua wrote in on Patreon, patreon.com/Zach Schaumler. Joshua says, Buenos dias, Zach. After Colorado lost to Oregon, something I predicted following the TCU victory. I don't know why you had to include that, Joshua, because I didn't know you predicted that. I mean, by the way, Joshua said he predicted that after the TCU victory. I have no way to prove that. I have no way of knowing you predicted that. I don't know why you needed to include that in your write-in, but I love you, man. Good for you, I guess. Joshua continues and says, I have seen many people state that Colorado got exposed and that their year is over. I believe many people have falsely believed that Colorado is even in a position to compete for a national title this year. That being said, my question is, what would you qualify as a success for Colorado this year? To me, I think Colorado's just getting started as a football program. They only won one game last year. They were 1-11. They were awful. Already, Colorado is 3-1. They've won 3 games, 3 more, 3 times the games they won last year. That's awesome. I think Deion is doing a great job. Colorado got smacked by a great team. They lost to Oregon 42-6. And after a sketchy win in double overtime against Colorado State, are we really shocked? I mean, I thought that, I said at the time, I'm hoping that Colorado can compete with Oregon, but after that win over Colorado State, I was like, I'm not convinced here. I'm really worried. So what's a realistic expectation? What's a good year for Colorado now that we kind of know who they are and where they fall? I mean, maybe there's some crazy, unexpected success and Colorado beats USC this next weekend. I mean, I will say USC's defense is significantly worse than Oregon. USC's defense is always suspect, and I think there's a shot Colorado makes the USC game fun and high-scoring and interesting simply because I have no faith in the USC defense, who is regularly a problem for that program. But I think really the goal here, the success, the thing you're aiming for if you're Colorado football is you want a bowl game. You want to go to a bowl game. That would be, you only need a 6-win season for that. If Colorado goes 7-5 or 8-4, that's a tremendous, tremendous year for them. Year one with Deion Sanders to go 7-5 would be unbelievable at Colorado. It would, I think, really exceed a lot of people's expectations. And, 7-5, 8-4 feels realistic right now. They got a couple tough games left. They play USC, Oregon State, Washington State, Utah. I mean, maybe they can steal one of those games. If you can steal a win from like Washington State, USC, you're looking at like a 3-4 loss year, which is pretty good if you're Colorado. But I think, remember where, Colorado's been a roller coaster. They started with no one expected anything from them. Then they beat TCU, and suddenly some people, like you said, Joshua, are literally talking about a national title for Colorado. Like, are you on drugs? No way. But it's been that way. The expectation is just fluctuating like crazy, up and down and up and down, and no one can keep track and no one can keep up. Realistic is 7-5, 8-4, which would be a tremendous home run. If Colorado went 8-4 or 7-5, year one with Deion, where everyone said the transfer portal is going to ruin college football, you can't have that many guys transfer in and have a cohesive good year. 8-4 would be unbelievable for Colorado football, and it would really be a sign that they're building stuff. So I think 6-6, 7-5, 8-4 is a realistic, somewhere in that window is a realistic goal. But if Colorado can get to a bowl game after going 1-11 last year, year one with Deion going to a bowl game, maybe even winning that bowl game, that would be a monumental success for Colorado football. And that's really what they're aiming for. Anything beyond a bowl game is just house money, man. Anything beyond a 6-win season is just a surprising, really cool overachievement by Colorado, in my opinion. And so that's where I stand. Those are my expectations the rest of the year for Colorado. All right, I got to give a shout out to Washington State quarterback Cameron Ward. Washington State beat Oregon State this past weekend 38-35. Cameron Ward had 5 touchdowns in this football game. He was 28 for 34 passing, had 404 yards, 4 touchdown passes. He also had a touchdown run on a quarterback sneak. He did have a fumble, but I'm telling you, I really want people to hear this. I need people to know. And I want to be also, let me back up. I went to Washington State. I watched Gardner Minshew play live, and I told you, Gardner Minshew's outstanding. He's fantastic. But the quarterback before him, Luke Falk, I did not believe in. I thought he was garbage. I was right about that. Then Anthony Gordon went to Washington State, had this incredible year, and I was like, he's not an NFL quarterback. Get out of here. Anthony Gordon is not an NFL quarterback. I remember saying that. I remember getting lots of hate for that. People I went to college with were furious at me. I was right about that. I'm not a homer for Washington State. I went to school there. I actually hated it. Screw Pullman, Washington. I hated they made me take chemistry class. I was a broadcast major. I'm like, why do I hated college. I was not mature enough to handle it, but I really hated going to school there. I have no affinity or love for Washington State. I'm not biased here. In fact, if anything, I'm biased against Washington State because I hate them. I spent tons of money. It was tons of BS. It was a horrible experience going to college there. I didn't like it. So I want it clear. When I tell you Cameron Ward is an NFL quarterback and unbelievable, I'm not biased. If anything, I'm going out of my way to look past my bias against Washington State and telling you Cameron Ward is fantastic. Cameron Ward is the most underappreciated quarterback in all of college football, and it drives me nuts. I don't understand or know why. Hold on, my camera's like freaking out. I looked off to my right. The camera was blurry. I lost my train of thought. It's really disappointing, but I want to go back to my rant. Cameron Ward is the most underappreciated quarterback in all of college football. It's borderline criminal that people aren't paying more attention to him and talking about him nationally. If Cameron Ward played for like any other program, if he went to Clemson, he would be a Heisman Trophy candidate. If he went to any other program other than Podunk, Washington State, and Pullman, Washington, Cameron Ward would be the talk of college football. I am telling you. Look him up. Watch his highlights. Watch how he plays. He can extend plays. He can make throws from different arm angles. If any quarterback in college football looks like Patrick Mahomes, it's Cameron Ward. We talk about all these quarterbacks around college football. Everyone gets all this fanfare. The guy left in the dust, the guy no one's paying attention to, that feels criminal to me is Cameron Ward. I hope NFL teams are paying attention to Cameron Ward. That's a franchise quarterback running around in the Palouse, making incredible throws and incredible plays at Washington State. And it baffles me. Like, if Cameron Ward has to transfer to Clemson, he maybe should. He should go somewhere where he's going to get noticed and get appreciated, because Cameron Ward is a fantastic quarterback in college football that somehow no one's paying attention to. And I went to Washington State. I'm close to that program. I actually don't really like it, like I said. But I feel like I was the first person and the only person to recognize, hey, Gardner Minshew can play. I watched him beat Baltimore. He didn't play great, but he's an NFL quarterback. He's doing great stuff. I was right about Luke Falk when I said he wasn't an NFL quarterback. I was right about Anthony Gordon when I watched him live at Washington State, said he's not an NFL quarterback. I am not biased here. I don't just pick every Washington State quarterback and say they're going to be great. Cameron Ward, I'm shocked. He transferred in from Incarnate Word in Texas, and is amazing. And the world isn't paying enough attention to Cameron Ward. I just have to get it off my chest and say it out loud. It drives me nuts. I have no idea why, but people should pay attention to Cameron Ward. What a fantastic quarterback. Can run, can throw. I've seen him convert like 3rd and 18 and throw for a touchdown. He does stuff that Patrick Mahomes does, and nobody's paying attention. Nobody talks about it. I hope people start to pay attention soon, because my advice, if I was Cameron Ward's dad, I'd say, look, man, you should transfer. You should go somewhere where you're going to get noticed and appreciated. Maybe USC needs a quarterback after Caleb Williams is gone. Go be USC's quarterback and dominate. I just really, really believe in Cameron Ward. He's an incredible quarterback, an incredible talent. It drives me nuts that he doesn't get national attention. He's so good. By the way, so I talked about how Washington State beat Oregon State this past weekend. Looking ahead, the other school in Oregon and the other school in Washington, the Oregon Ducks play the Washington Huskies at Washington in Seattle in 2 weeks, October 14th. Oregon plays at Washington. Both teams are undefeated right now. Both teams are in the top 10. That's going to be a phenomenal football game. A Washington team that looks unbeatable for the Huskies, an Oregon team that just dominated Colorado 42-6. I cannot wait to see what happens October 14th between Oregon and Washington. All right. I'm going to have to cut that together. I have no idea what's going to happen there. I was recording. I think it's because I threw my hand out like straight at the camera, and the camera's autofocus focused on my hand. So for I don't know how long, your boy Zach was super blurry on the camera, and so if you're watching on YouTube, I'm sure it looked really weird. And then I had to cut because I don't know what is good from that or not. It really sucks too because I was mid-flow. I was mid-rant, really feeling great. Had to cut it off completely. I have no idea. I was literally thinking for a second, this is a rant that could go viral. And then of course, stick my stupid hand out, autofocus gets all screwed up. I have no idea what happened there, but man, I really, 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 really believe Cameron Ward is fantastic and needs more focus. All right, let's end the show with questions from Patreon. If you want to support the show, it's very important. If you want to support Strong Opinion Sports, go to patreon.com/Zach Schaumler. I am Zach. Patreon.com/Zach Schaumler. It's $1 a month. You can donate more if you want to. Please do. It literally pays my rent. But $1 a month gives you access to submit questions on Patreon. Now, I do not guarantee to read your question on the show. My only guarantee is I look at every single question with my eyeballs and I pick the top couple to read on the show. So, also I want to say, by the way, they added a perk on Patreon. So if you're at the $5 tier or higher on Patreon, you get access to the Strong Opinion Sports Discord. And it's a fun group. We're just starting out. I have no idea what I'm doing as far as moderating it. I'm learning how all that works. But my vision for this Discord server is that it can be a place where I've got a couple channels. One is funny stuff where people can share memes and whatever, and I'd like that. There's a general one, and then there's a sports one, and I just want a place where we can all hang out and share news and talk about stuff, and you can share your opinions in a place I'm going to pay attention and listen and see it. And so at the $5 tier and higher, I'm trying to add more value to Patreon, as well as, honestly, I just like that setting. I saw in the fantasy football league I'm in, having a group chat was fun. I'm like, how can I have a group chat with a bunch of people who like the show? So that's what we're doing. And if you're at the $5 tier or higher on Patreon, you get automatic access to the Strong Opinion Sports Discord server. And hey, it's a little bit of jokes there, a little bit of fun's happening. We've had some people in already, and we were talking during the games on Sunday. It was fun. I really like doing it. And if you want to join the Discord, the $5 tier or on Patreon or higher gets you access to that. And come hang out. I think it's really cool. Question number 1 on Patreon today, after Joshua, whose question we already read, is from Golden Leo. Golden Leo writes in and says, "Hey, Zack-O-Lantern. Not entirely sports related, but tangentially connected. Last week when speaking about playing quarterback, you mentioned a few things that stuck out to me. Things like enjoying a high stress or tense situations, and most of what you described as important to playing quarterback all fall under textbook traits of people with ADHD. As a 27-year-old, I recently was diagnosed with ADHD and likely on the autism spectrum. And I noticed that most of my colleagues in academia, I'm an aspiring historian, earning a master's in the coming months, all also displayed similar traits. I've noticed a handful of professions with similar patterns that allow neurodivergent people to excel since the requirements work well for people who think in different ways. For the actual question part, apologies for the extended background context, I was wondering if you yourself had ever been tested or suspected that you might have ADHD. Also, do you think it's maybe possible that high-level quarterbacks may also qualify? Things like spending hours studying film, having heavy awareness of minor details, and being super quick to judge and handle high-stress situations are all similar to common ADHD neurodivergent traits. I think it would be an interesting thing to look into, and if it's true, it could be a good push to help break mental health stigmas down. Do I have ADHD? I 1000% believe I have ADHD. I can't do anything about it. When I was a kid, for example, my mom would put me in a car seat. When I was like 2 years old, I would freak the living daylights out. I could not sit in my car seat unless the car was moving forward. I could never sit still. I always had more energy. I could never focus on anything. I couldn't read till I was like in 5th grade because I couldn't learn or pay attention in class. I grew up really poor. We couldn't do anything about it financially. Now as an adult, I still don't have the money to like deal with it. I can't go to a doctor and like get an ADHD. I can't even afford a doctor visit. Like I don't have the stuff to deal with that or figure it out. But I do struggle massively with focusing. And then I also get moments where like I hyper focus on specific things and get locked into something and can watch film for like 20 hours in a day. Like I very much, I've known for a long time I have like all the symptoms of ADHD and I can't do anything about it, but I'm aware. I'm not sure how a diagnosis would even help. Like I've never known like, okay, like great. Now you know, what do you do about it? Maybe Adderall would help. I still couldn't afford it. So just anything health related, just an endless wall of like, well, my financial system's not great and, or my financial situation's not great and our health system is horrible in America. So I run into that brick wall financially every time I try to deal with anything like that. In fact, one time I paid a ton of money to go to a doctor and they didn't help me at all. And it discouraged me from ever wanting to go to a doctor ever again. I spent like $3,000 to figure out a thing with my nose. And they were like, yeah, take Flonase. I was like, screw you. Like, what? I spent the extra money to go to an ENT and that's your advice is take Flonase? Okay, great. So I have no faith in the American health system at all and it drives me nuts. But yeah, every time I read the symptoms or the traits of ADHD, I go, yeah, it's definitely that's me. What do I do about it? Nothing really. There's nothing I can do. But yeah, sure, I believe that. And is there a stigma that like, you know, I've made jokes like maybe I'm autistic. That's very possible. That there feels like there's a big. I would never want to look into that for fear of finding out I do have autism because I think if I had autism and was open about it, I would probably get like canceled or people would make fun of me. I think people would stop listening to the show. That feels like a detriment to me making money and surviving. ADHD doesn't have the same stigma. So like you mentioned the stigma, like if, I don't know, Patrick Mahomes has ADHD and like he shows all the symptoms, like I don't think anyone's going to look down on Patrick Mahomes for having ADHD. I don't know why, but like autism and ADHD like are so like different. And I think that right or wrong, because one of my best friends in the world has autism and he's like amazing. I love him to death. And I think it's like a superpower for him where He's just smarter than everyone. He can figure shit out better. And, oh, pardon my French. He can lock into something, and it allows him to be really good at his job. He's an engineer, and he's amazing. So I have no problem with people that are autistic, but I do feel like nationally and to the general public, there's a stigma against autism that doesn't exist when it comes to ADHD, and that's just an observation of mine. Richmond writes in and says, "Hey, Zach, so Washington State and Oregon State, the Big Ten didn't want them because they don't make enough money. The Big 12 didn't want them because they make no sense geographically, and the ACC, who showed up so late, their best move was to pick up the smart schools, didn't want them because their academics weren't good enough. With the expanded playoff having guaranteed bids for the top X conference champions, Washington State and Oregon State can still compete for a championship as a group of 5 school, at least technically. How much longer will they remain competitively relevant after the downgrade in the regular opposition and conference revenue? Hate to see 2 good programs get punished for being smaller than their results." So Washington State and Oregon State, I guess, I don't know what they're going to do next year. Are they going to stay at Pac-2? I have no idea what they do. I think joining the Mountain West would hurt you financially and hurt you optically when it comes to recruiting. I would not be shocked if Washington State and Oregon State just remained independent for a couple of years until they found a place to go. But also, to be honest, I went to Washington State. I grew up in Oregon. I know both programs very well. Neither of them were bringing in top recruits. I mean, Washington State won with Mike Leach, for example, because Mike Leach was a great coach who had great quarterbacks, and they won with like 3-star level talent. They were not winning with 5 stars and the best recruits in the country. Same with Oregon State. Oregon State is not recruiting at the highest level in the country. They're just putting together well-coached football teams that steal a couple good recruits from Hawaii and do some good stuff and then dominate. So I don't know how much not being a part of a conference is going to hurt the Pac-12 or hurt Oregon State and Washington State, the people remaining from what's left of whatever the Pac-12 is going to become. I don't know how that's going to hurt them or not. We have no idea how to predict that. But I will point out that Oregon State, Washington State, they're both in the top 25 right now, and they didn't do it with 5-star recruits and getting the best players in the country. They did it with good coaching and a couple good players at dynamic players in key positions. And so coaching matters. They both teams, Oregon State and Washington State, have good coaches right now. I guess we'll wait and see. I am really curious to see if they join the Mountain West or they just remain independent for a year and build a schedule themselves, because I have no idea what to expect from either program. And it would be sad to see them totally go away. It's actually funny right now. Oregon State spent a ton of money rebuilding their stadium and doing upgrades and all this stuff. And their plan was to use a media deal to pay for it. Well, now that money's gone. So to pay for their stadium renovations, they're going to have to raise tuition. So you could be paying $100,000 a year to go to Oregon State to pay for your stadium. It's like an insane reality where you're paying as much as going to some liberal arts school in LA as it would cost for you to go to Oregon State in-state. I mean, the tuition is going to be insane, and I have no idea what's going to happen to Oregon State or Washington State, but I'm very, very fascinated in that. David writes in. David says, "Hey, Zach, I have a question about Colorado against Colorado State. I have watched the late hit by Henry Blackburn on Travis Hunter about 10 times, becoming angrier every time I saw it. My understanding is that he suffered a laceration of his liver and will be out for some games. Do you think that college football should have done more to deter this from happening again? Yes, they penalized Colorado State 30 yards, but without kicking Henry Blackburn out of the game or suspending the player, what is going to stop Henry Blackburn from doing it again? Also, you can see the impact that Deion Sanders is making, and it is something for us all to emulate. The fact that Travis Hunter in a press conference took the high road and did not speak out against this, even though it would have been completely justified and completely understandable, and might I add, definitely what I would have done. Instead, Travis Hunter said, stuff like that is going to happen, so I just stay humble. He did what he was supposed to do. So yeah, Deion Sanders, his leadership and the way he treats other people and talks about other people is leaking into his team, and they're kind of taking on his personality. I like that, especially the key players, Shadur, Travis Hunter, Dylan Edwards. They're still a bit out of pocket. I think Colorado was a bit like pregame against Oregon. I've never understood the stepping on the logo at midfield. Like, I don't know why that's bad. I don't know why, like, I've never understood any of it. Like, if you step on the logo in a college football stadium, like, okay, like you're there, you're stepping on grass. Oh no, like I've never cared about that, never understood that. As far as Henry Blackburn, it is pretty wild he never got a suspension or missed a game or anything. There is no system in place right now to eject a player for a dirty hit like that, which, by the way, let's be clear, that was undeniably a dirty, awful play by Henry Blackburn. Went out of his way, play was over to just level Travis Hunter, the best player on Colorado's football team. Like in the NFL, that would be they would fine you to oblivion. You would miss probably 3 games, get fined a ton of money. In college football, you can't fine a player. And right now, unless it's targeting with the crown of the helmet, you can't eject a player. And you need multiple personal foul penalties to get ejected. So it's really just a situation where, yeah, we learned from that game in college football. If you're taking cheap shots, you get one cheap shot, and if you do only one, they can't really do anything about it, which is very fascinating and disappointing that, like, Colorado State, they need to find a way to, I guess you wouldn't want to punish your own player and give him his own suspension, but I'm disappointed that the NCAA or Mountain West or somebody didn't step in and say, hey, you can't play next week. That kind of hit, we don't tolerate that. That kind of late, dirty hit, we don't allow. I mean, if you haven't seen the video of Henry Blackburn hitting Travis Hunter, it's straight up one of the dirtiest hits I've ever seen. Play is clearly over. There's no reason to hit him. The ball's on the ground, incomplete pass. Like, there is nothing happening there. And he goes out of his way just to, like, ruin his night and get him injured, basically. Like, that's you taking a shot to injure somebody. That kind of stuff cannot be allowed in football, where you are, if you want to beat Travis Hunter, do it on the field. Don't allow him to catch the ball, play great coverage. You can even hit him when he has the dang football. But a defenseless receiver doesn't have the football, play is over, and you just run and level him. That's the most dirty thing I can even imagine. And it's wild and frustrating that there's no way to penalize or punish Henry Blackburn for that. Mark writes in, Mark says, "Oi, mate, we always see you shuffling around notes during episodes, and I was just curious to see what they look like." Is it weird to say that I don't want to show you? They're just bullet points, man. I don't know. I've got stats that are key, like, for example, like Jamar Chase had 12 catches for 141 yards during Monday Night Football. I wanted that written down so that I could remember it more easily and have it just be sure I'm right on the stat. So any like stat I ever say on the show is written down so I could be absolutely sure I don't misquote a stat. I also sequence my stuff so that I could know like what order to talk about it, but it's bullet points, and then I put them in order that I want to talk about. Sometimes I get jumbled up or like I'll have an idea or my brain just goes and I end up on one of my bullet points early and I just try to ride with it, and you'll see me crossing stuff off as I go. But sometimes when you tell a story or present an argument or an idea or a topic, like the sequence of how you unveil it really matters. And so that's like key to me, is like the sequence of all this stuff. Or for example, right now, like in front of me, I've got all the Patreon questions on a piece of paper, and I'm going through, like I wrote a bullet point basically for each one to talk about. Like that way I don't read your question and have no effort and nothing thought about ahead of time on what I'm going to say. I try to be thoughtful even when I answer Patreon questions. It's not just me sitting down and BSing for however long. So Mark, well, you want to see my notes? I put it on screen very briefly. John writes in on Patreon. John says, "Howdy, howdy, Pirates of the Caribbean, curse of the Zach Pearl." That's fun. I like that. Captain Zach Sparrow, baby. If I ever have a boat, that's what I want people to call me. John says, "You mentioned that Kellen Moore may replace Brandon Staley if Brandon Staley is fired. You also mentioned how Washington's season may start to falter due to their difficult schedule. If things start to look bad for the commies," I hate that. I hate that we can call them that. Why do they come up with the Washington Commanders is such a bad name. I hate it so much. Anyway, do you think Ron Rivera is let go if the Washington Commanders season goes south and maybe Eric Bieniemy takes over as head coach? How would that change the look of the team?" Here's what I think about, honestly. if you get rid of Ron Rivera, and let's say that Sam Howell doesn't work out, you're going to have to draft a quarterback in Washington. What kind of coach do you want to be the coach next year as Washington drafts a rookie quarterback? You want an offensive-minded coach. Ron Rivera doesn't help a rookie quarterback at all. Maybe Eric Bieniemy could. And that's assuming a lot. We've only seen one really bad game from Sam Howell. Had 4 interceptions. It wasn't great. But, if Washington's season does derail, I have no problem. I mean, this really is Ron Rivera's last shot. I probably never gets a head coaching job again after Washington. Although he's set for life and he can walk away and be fine. I like the idea of promoting Eric Bieniemy to interim head coach and seeing how it goes. And if he does well, keep him on because he's an offensive-minded coach, and that's really what you want when you have a young quarterback. And whether it's Sam Howell or the next guy, the coach that's working with a young quarterback is the most valuable coach in your organization. So I have no opposition to Ron Rivera getting fired and Eric Bieniemy being made head coach in Washington. Okay, last question of the day. Donovan writes in. Donovan says, hey, Zach, my name is Donovan, and I hate to admit it, but I'm a Broncos fan. My girlfriend is a Niners fan, so I think I'm going to hitch my ride to that wagon for the rest of the year. I had cautious optimism for the rest of the year when through 2 games, the record was 0-2 with a point differential of -3. Now that we're 0-3 with a point differential of -53, I've lost every ounce of optimism. I don't even want to ask you about this team because I know I'll get a rightfully earned negative answer. So I'll ask you something about something instead. What was the worst loss you ever had as a player, and how did you deal with it after the game? Oh, man. The loss that really sticks out to me, I lost in high school to Camas High School, my senior year. We lost my junior year, but they were amazing. They went to the state title game, and I was new to the area. I didn't even really properly understand how good Camas was. So my second year, after my junior season, I spent the entire offseason working really hard to beat Camas. Like my whole drive and motivation and force of life was I want to beat Camas my senior year. And we had them like 17-14 at halftime. And then in the second half, they beat us pretty bad. And we couldn't keep up. And I was really sick in that game too. I remember being had the flu. It was horrible. Also, there were college coaches at the game watching, and I that's a game I remember really vividly where I took a big hit and I laid on the ground for a long time, and they probably thought I wasn't durable. They probably thought I couldn't take a hit because I just laid on the ground for a long time. I was hurting. I was full of mucus. I was super sick with the flu. We're losing. It sucked. I mean, it was a moment where I was just really low as a person. In a game, that's the worst loss of my life. Even my last loss of my senior year, we lost at Wenatchee High School in the snow, and they had crampons on. They were running circles around us. I had, I think 400 yards, something crazy, some amazing amount of yards passing, and we lost, and we had multiple touchdowns dropped, multiple big third downs dropped, and I remember being really deflated, but that loss didn't hurt as much. I was just kind of numb. The Camas loss was the one where I just was like, man, I really wanted to beat them. I really thought we had them. We worked all offseason to try to beat them, and they blew us out. By the way, we were close at halftime. We had them. We were competing really good. We had a great game plan, and it fell apart in the second half. I'll be honest, though. Those are the only 2 losses I really even remember. I don't, I just don't, I don't linger too hard on, I never linger too hard on losses in sports. Losing's hard though, man. Losing in life is really hard. I mean, I've had a lot of, I think way more than as an athlete, I've had way more losses in my personal life, whether it's calling off an engagement or my brother dying or financially. I mean, I've had a lot of really tough moments that were deflating and honestly promoted or led to depression and led to some really hard stuff. And sometimes you have a loss where you feel like you can't shake it, man. And so I don't know where I'm going here. I just want to say I understand. I've had some really, really difficult moments in my life. And if you're a person who's struggling, I understand. I get it. I've been there. feel free to go get help. Go talk to people. I've always really struggled to ask for people's help or go get help. I'm kind of a do-it-myself person. I'm self-employed. I never want to ask for anyone's help in anything. I just like to do it all myself. And part of that comes from, I think, childhood. And there's a whole bunch of therapy you can deal with to unpack all that. But I don't know, man. I just know that losing is really difficult. And I love you so much. And if you're having a hard time out there, I've been there. I have been. I think almost people should like. I think good content for me would be just having people ask me questions about my life because I've seen crazy stuff. I've done crazy stuff. I had weird moments. Like for example, I was thinking the other day about how one time I was talking about my childhood bully and I accidentally said his name, and he like threatened to sue me and attacked me. And his way of proving publicly that he wasn't a bully when I was in middle school was by threatening to sue me and attacking me, having his entire family on social media attack me. So that's how he proved he wasn't a bully. Like, I don't know. I feel like I have lots of weird, interesting stories that I don't know how to pull out of myself. But I mean, feel free, guys. Like if you have, I love when people ask me questions about way more than just sports. So anytime you want, DMs are open, questions are open, man. On these threads for Strong Opinion Sports, the Patreon questions, feel free to ask anything. I think it's really fun to talk about way more than just sports. So I love you. I appreciate you. I'll talk to you tomorrow on Wednesday. Yes, I'll be recording tomorrow. I'm going to watch the Colts-Ravens game right after this and watch Gardner Minshew beat Baltimore in overtime. That'll be really fun and interesting. I love you. I appreciate you. I hope you have a great day. And bam, we are done.